Good evening, everyone. Let me call to order this meeting of the West Palm Beach City Commission. It is Tuesday, February 18th, 2025, and the time is 5 p.m. We will start this meeting off, as we do all of our meetings, with a moment of silence, please. Madam President, can you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yes. Let me remind everyone of the rules of civility and decorum which govern this meeting. Officials shall be recognized by the chair and shall not interrupt the speaker. Public comment shall be addressed to the City Commission as a whole and not to any individual on the dais or in the audience. Displays of anger, rudeness, ridicule, impatience, lack of respect, and personal attacks are strictly prohibited. Unauthorized remarks from the audience, stamping of feet, whistles, yells, and similar demonstrations should not be permitted. Please govern yourselves accordingly, as offenders may be removed from the meeting. Also, any person desiring to address the commission shall complete a comment card for each agenda item the person wishes to address, and they shall also include their full name, address, and the numbered agenda item on the card. If the card is not completed in entirety, you will not be recognized. Thank you. Madam City Administrator, are there any additions, deletions, reorganization of the agenda?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. We do have one proclamation proclaiming February 28th, 2025 as the Lord's Place March to Homelessness Awareness Day. And I will be presenting this to the interim CEO of the Lord's Place, Carrie Diaz, and their Chief Advancement Officer, Ann Noble. Say a few words? One of you? Both of you?
Sure. We'll both say a few words. Thank you very much for this honor. As you know, it is our inaugural March to End Homelessness, and it's coming up fast and furious. This is a peaceful gathering of people to walk the streets in solidarity with those that do not have shelter. As Annie has famously coined, it is about peace, love, and housing. Do you want to add anything, Annie, who birthed this event?
That was perfect, but we do hope the community joins, and we're just so grateful for all the support. I did bring some brochures and shirts for you or your family. If you're able to accept it, I can leave it up here front for you.
Yes, you can leave it with the clerk.
Thank you again.
Thank you for all the work you do.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll now turn to the consent calendar, items 7.1 through 7.9. Any questions, comments on consent? Do we have any cards on consent?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. If there are no questions or comments, I will entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move approval of the items on consent.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, like sign. Hearing no opposition, motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Item 8.1, resolution number 39-25, finding city-owned property located at 2410 North Australian Avenue is not needed for city purposes, declaring the property a surplus and authorizing negotiations with VDG Land Company, LLC, for sale of the property. Ms. Ferriel?
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Commissioners, Mayor, members of the public. Jennifer Ferriel, Housing and Community Development Director. The City of West Palm Beach owns property located at 2410 North Australian Avenue, consisting of approximately 1.16 acres. The property is currently zoned as recreation open space, but the surrounding area has historically been developed as a mix of commercial and multifamily uses. Currently, the property has some underground utilities. There is a sanitary sewer system that is connected to the adjacent lift station, and there are also some overhead power lines on the site. As I stated, the site is indeed vacant, and for these reasons, there is very limited development capacity that could be achieved on this parcel. And most likely, the only way to really be able to develop the existing site is if it is assembled with adjacent parcels as a part of a greater development. Taking that into consideration, the city was approached by VDG Land Company, who owns the two adjacent parcels as highlighted here in my presentation. And the developer intends or has proposed to purchase the city lot in order to assemble the properties for an affordable and/or workforce housing development, particularly for an employer housing campus. If the City Commission decides for the city to move forward with these negotiations, we will ensure that a significant number of the units on the site are set aside for affordable and/or workforce housing purposes for a minimum of 30 years. We will ensure that there are easements in place across the southern portion of the site to ensure right of access and to ensure that the utilities are indeed buried. And we may also decide to retain ownership of the portion that is currently being occupied by the lift station. Before staff can proceed with negotiations, we are required by the city's Code of Ordinances under Section 231 to ensure that the property is declared as a surplus and that is deemed not necessary for city purposes, and that city staff selects a method of disposition. In this case, it would be direct negotiations with the adjacent owner, known as VDG Land Company. With that being said, staff recommends resolution of 3925 declaring the property as surplus and selecting the method of disposition to be formal negotiations with the interested party. This concludes my presentation. I'm happy to take any questions at this time.
Thank you for that presentation. Any questions, comments, commissioners? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor, move approval of resolution number 39-25.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, can you read the ordinance, please? No, we need. I'm sorry. This is a resolution. Got ahead of myself. All right. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, like sign. Hearing no opposition, motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right. Now we'll turn to item 9.1, public hearing and first reading of ordinance number 5121-24. A city-initiated request for a zoning map amendment to rezone certain properties from Broadway Mixed-Use District Building Type 1 and Broadway Mixed-Use District Building Type 2 to Broadway Mixed-Use District BMUD, and public hearing and first reading of ordinance number 5122-24, a city-initiated request for a text amendment to the Zoning and Land Development Regulations, Chapter 94, Article 1, Section 94-4, to designate the new Broadway mixed-use district zoning categories, and amending Article 7, Sections 94-209, 94-219, 94-220, and 94-221 to establish new development standards and regulations for the Broadway mixed-use district. Ms. Aponte.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. Ana Maria Aponte, Assistant Development Services Director. We're going to present today, as the Mayor said, the two items related with the BMUD new regulations. We have been working in this for a while. The presentation is going to be shared between different people. I'm going to do an introduction. Chris Rook, the CRA Director, is going to present the CRA approach to the BMUD redevelopment efforts. We have Dover Cole and Partners, the consultants that have been helping us to draft this regulation here, and they're going to cover the details of the presentation or the proposed regulation. And then at the end, I will come back and address kind of the technical parts of the approval process. As you know, I mean, we are here because Broadway, it's a corridor that we have all identified that needs a new life. It's an area that has great potential, but has not been able to flourish as we wish. So over the years, we have been working on trying to spur redevelopment in the district. And we basically identified that we needed to adopt revised zoning and land development regulations to promote the redevelopment of the Broadway corridor. Some attempts were done in the past, but the regulation that was drafted in the previous version was not enough to promote the redevelopment. We believe that this time the conditions, not only the regulation is going to offer additional development capacity, but the market is ready for approaching the north end of the city and have some productive redevelopment of the area. The intention has always been to transform the corridor into a pedestrian-friendly area with services for the surrounding community and make Broadway part of the neighborhoods as kind of the mixed-use area where the services for those residential neighborhoods happen. And at the same time, it has been identified as a perfect area to promote the construction of workforce housing units. So with those goals in mind, we have been working with the City of West Palm Beach and the Planning Department. And I was, when I was at the CRA, I was leading the process, and now I'm back at the Planning and kind of still trying to move this forward. The CRA has been supporting the effort and leading the initiative. They have provided the financial resources to hire the two consultants that we have been working with, Doverco and Partners, an urban design and planning firm from Miami. And we also hired the services of Daedalus Advisory Services, that is a consulting firm that specializes on basically analyzing the financial and the market viability of the project. So at the same time that we were drafting the regulations, we were working with Daedalus to be sure that the regulation was viable and was sufficient to attract the developers in this. As this is not to say that it's a tough environment, not because of the social context or anything like that, but because the lots are very, very small and narrow for the proposed development. So when we drafted the additional height, we were very conscious of how to achieve height but protect the residential neighborhood and how to really feed everything on those lots that are small. So that was the big challenge for the regulation. We think we have reached a good point where we have balanced protection of the single-family neighborhood, but also promote enough development capacity that is attractive for the private sector to come in. So now I'm gonna transfer to Chris Rook, that is here, yes, and he's gonna present their CRA perspective for this.
Good evening, Mayor, City Commissioners. Chris Rook, Executive Director of the CRA, and I completely forgot that I had this slide. I'm so glad I came down. Since you all sit on the CRA board, you know about this plan, as a lot of this direction came from you all as part of the strategic finance plan. It was set when I was first brought in as executive director. The board made it very clear that you wanted, above all else, to see Broadway redeveloped in a very major way. And so we built that into essentially the strategic finance plan for the CRA that set out some of these critical steps in order to make that a reality. First and foremost, it was looking at the BMUD regulations, and that's what's before you today. Concurrently with that, we were also looking at an aggressive land acquisition strategy, which at this point has concluded. So we own strategic parcels along the corridor in order to have control of some portion of Broadway. And then lastly was to basically combine those two efforts into a project that takes the land that we own and apply those regulations in a meaningful way to sort of show how the corridor could be redeveloped under these new regulations and to sort of prime the pump, so to speak, for redevelopment efforts. And so that has been in place now for some time, for the last couple of years. So it's a very exciting point that we're at now where we can actually start saying that we've completed these steps in order to make the redevelopment of the corridor a reality. So to date, just as part of the overall work plans, this is what we've been doing, as Anna has mentioned, contracting with Dover Coal to go through all of those regulatory components, and then also to help us with the outreach, which has been extensive. Starting with our CRA advisory board, those are our volunteers that we meet with on a regular basis. And then from there, just aggressive outreach with our surrounding neighborhoods, with the residents that live there and those property owners, followed by the business community and even the developers, which was a very interesting discussion that we had when it came to what was going to make a project really feasible. We then went to the Chamber of Commerce, who also voted in favor of the regulations, which was really great. In addition to, I know I'm missing somebody, but it'll come to me in a moment. But we also did the financial analysis to really show that this could be a reality. So with all of that and the property acquisition, it really is exciting to sort of see that if we adopt the regulations tonight, we can start promoting this new development along the corridor. So a pretty extensive effort from the CRA, and we're really happy that the planning staff is here with us today to present these new regulations moving forward. So with that, introduce Dover Cole.
Any questions for Mr. Rook before he steps away?
Sorry, Mayor.
Commissioner Warren?
Thank you for the outreach. Can you tell me what the response was from the residents in the area? What feedback did they provide?
So the feedback from the residents was really great. The initial outreach that we did, I think we had close to 180, and we have the numbers in the slides, yes. So we'll go through just what the turnout looked like. But very energetic, above all else, a desire to really see the corridor change in a major way. That was very clear. And then because of that desire to see things change, you saw this lively discussion about how that corridor could be reflected in many ways, whether it was height, density, just a variety of things. But above all else, they really just wanted to see the corridor change in a major and fundamental way that could set it up for leveling up the corridor from what it currently is. And even as a result of a lot of the just the discussion, we've seen investment occur. Tapatia Market has put in a tremendous amount of money at the old Walgreens that's at the corner of 45th Street and Broadway, as well as other folks that are very eager to sort of see the adoption of regulations to really sort of change the trajectory of the street.
Any other questions for Mr. Root? Okay.
Thank you.
Well, good evening. My name is Jackie Delarca. I'm here representing Dover Cole & Partners.
And I'm Natalie Lipsy, also representing Dover Cole & Partners.
We are very excited to be in front of you all today. I know we've had the honor of meeting some of you, and some of you also came to our public workshop. So this has been an effort that we are very excited to present to you all today. And like Chris was saying, and Maria as well, this effort had a lot of public engagement, and we had quite a bit of different focus meetings throughout the last couple of years. Starting in September of 2023 at the Manatee Lagoon, we had more than 180 people attending. We had a follow-up meeting in February of 2024. We also had focus meetings at the North and Rice Community Resource Center, as well as the Esperanza Center, and these were also attended by people that did not attend the bigger Manatee Lagoon workshops. Then we came back late last year in the fall, to present what we are presenting to you all today and get the feedback from the community and the residents from this area. We had opportunities for them to speak up, to mark maps and tell us exactly where they want to see change, what are the different issues that they want to resolve. And we asked questions like, one word that comes to mind about Broadway Corridor now, and we saw big alarming words like crime and prostitution, sketchy, but we left with the hope of what the residents were describing, that in the future they can see potential, they can see a safe street, walkability improvements. So with that, we continue to come back and have different meetings with them. And as you can see on the screen, we asked, based on what you heard tonight, is the plan on the right track? And an overwhelming amount of over 90% of people said yes or probably yes. So we are very confident that we can see change change in this corridor. And the goal through this entire process has been the same one, which is to be able to provide growth and development to this community who is desperate to see it in their corridor. Once again, just to remind everyone, the study area that we were focusing on is on US 1 from 25th Street to 59th Street. And we wanted to create an experience where people could come and walk and be able to just feel safe in these streets, be able to enjoy a coffee, but at the same time have a public space to be able to create that community sense. And this zoning, this code change is focused on more of the form of the buildings rather than the uses themselves, because once we create the spaces that these buildings can shape, we can create public spaces within the same street. And the street itself is the one that can be activated to create these destinations for the people who work here, live here, and also visit this corridor. So some of the main sections in the code, again, we'll jump into a little bit more of detail about each of these topics, but we talked about heights and how we can increase the heights within the corridor. We talked about the setbacks from the front of facing Broadway to the sides, all the way to the rear end of the properties. We also talked about streetscape improvements and how to make the street even more beautiful, the different uses that could be allowed there, as well as the other areas of BMUD that are right across from the Broadway mixed-use district. So now Natalie will walk you through some of the first things that we talked through the code.
One of the first elements I'll speak to you about today is the building heights. We had a lot of conversations with the community members about what height they would like to see along Broadway. Currently, Broadway has a 3-height maximum as of right, and our updates to the code continue with the 3-height maximum, with the opportunity to have up to 7 stories with community benefits associated. So with the different benefits provided for the community, they can go up to 76 feet or 7 stories. There are also setbacks that we go into detail about, the front setbacks and the side setbacks. It's not just about the heights along Broadway, it's also about creating an environment that's very pedestrian friendly and creates a community space. These are created through the different front setbacks. The first being the 7-foot district for landscape zone, creating trees or having different lighting. Then a 5-foot clear path in the middle to have an area free of obstructions just to walk all the way along the sidewalk, and a 5-foot frontage zone, all of this adding up to a 17-foot front setback. These areas allow for on-street dining, as well as different signages that can be placed along the front of the buildings, creating an environment similar to this render that we've created. That's very shaded and pedestrian-friendly and in a place that people can come and gather. One of the examples, we then looked at properties along Broadway, such as this one on 54th Street, which is one of the CRA-owned properties, and what it could look like based off of these zoning improvements. Currently, as of right, they could build something similar to this, but with our improvements, they could have a front setback that has more pedestrian-friendly environment, commercial spaces that are very inviting, as well as the opportunity to go up to 7 stories with different public benefits, such as having affordable units that are in line with the codes that have been approved of recently with the affordable units. We also have the side setbacks at 15 feet with a 5-foot landscape zone, a 5-foot clear path, and a 5-foot landscape buffer for parking areas that's along the property line. This is to create a safe environment along the sides. So for example, on 51st Street on the side setbacks would create an environment similar to this, where there's space for greenery, landscaping, as well as that buffer zone between the street and the building. Next, we'll go into the rear setbacks, which Jackie could speak about.
So we talked about the front, we talked about the sides, and now we will take a look at the back part of these properties. So one of the biggest concerns that we kept hearing was, what about the houses right behind Broadway? We don't want them to feel like there's this 7-story building right next to them. So we took a lot of consideration of what these setbacks would look like. And we came up with a 5 feet vegetative buffer between the side of the house to the rear property of Broadway. And then there's a minimum of 10 feet building setback that would be, so they cannot build buildings up to the property line, but rather there has to be at least 10 feet setback. The reality of this is that since these buildings need parking and an alley to access that parking, the buildings would probably be even more setback from the 10 feet. We also took into consideration the additional height that some of these buildings could have. So beyond the 3 stories of as of right, any other stories, the 4th up to the 7th story, would have to be set back 24 feet from that rear setback. That allows for these buildings to not feel encroached by these larger buildings, but instead still giving a lot of space for those residents to still feel comfortable in their properties. Besides the vegetative buffer, there's also a wall that would allow for less sound pollution, as well as just more of a separation between these neighboring properties to the new development coming in Broadway. And again, these are just some graphics that are included within our code to make it as clear as possible what these regulations would entail. Then we move on to the uses, and pretty much we looked at the existing uses table, and anything that is more auto-oriented or things that are not as pedestrian-friendly, we took them out of this list. So it's pretty straightforward. If it's not in the list, it is not allowed. And again, the majority of these uses are uses that you can access through a pedestrian rather than uses that are more towards automobile-oriented uses. And now Natalie will talk a little bit more about that BMUD expanded district.
So the code also includes something called the BMUD-E, which is the BMUD expanded district, which looks at the opportunity for how the properties adjacent to the BMUD, purchased adjacent to the BMUD properties, expand past the BMUD line. This was created just to ensure the safety and of the residential properties and create an environment that isn't too far encroached and protect the residential properties surrounding BMUD. The idea behind BMUD-E is for it not to go into the historic districts. It's only for properties that have been vacant as of January 1st for the historic districts. And any properties that are trying to apply for BMUD-E have to all be owned by the same property owners and set to be approved at one time. So all of the adjacent properties have to go into the approval process as one unified project and can't be added in later. This allows for more opportunities to create mixed use and missing middle housing along the adjacent properties to BMUD, and create an environment that's more residential in nature instead of having these BMUD properties really encroach into the residential parts, and have the different buildings such as multiplexes, mansion apartments, townhouses, and small apartments that are all residential nature, so that there's always like facing like within these spaces. For example, this is one of the properties that has adjacent properties behind that could all be combined together to create one larger unit, but we want to ensure that it doesn't create too much of a height difference between the properties along Broadway and the properties that are in these expanded districts. So the ones along Broadway can go up to 7 stories, while the ones that are further in, that are adjacent to these properties, must be at a max height of 3 stories. And creating one central unit. So BMUD has 7 stories, not 30 stories, and BMUD-E has 3 stories, not 7. So this is a look at what BMUD looks like today, and this is what it could be in the future, with local-oriented businesses along Broadway, new businesses coming in, and affordable housing above. We are trying to create a quality of life and a really inclusive area that has opportunities to walk around and really create a center for this BMUD corridor.
So in conclusion, we believe that these regulations would allow for development to come within Broadway, an area that we've seen struggle for many years, but this would create opportunities for local businesses to be there, for people to be able to live and work where they are, and we really believe that this could be the change that Broadway is looking for. So now Ana Maria will give just some closing remarks.
Before you come up, Anna Marie, are there any questions for the consultants? Okay, Ms. Aponte. Oh, okay.
It's more of a comment, but, I was able to attend some of those neighborhood meetings and community meetings that you held, and I just want to say thank you, and thank you to staff and administration for working with Dover Coal for these, because they were some of the most impressive community engagement events that I've seen, and I know that this is a long time coming for the neighborhood and the residents in that area and business owners, so I'm sure that that had a lot to do with it, that they wanted to participate, but you had opportunities for them to engage and to really give meaningful feedback, and that helps us to create something that I think will be really valuable to the city. Thank you.
Thank you. We enjoyed meeting with all the residents and all the times that we were here, so we appreciate that.
Thank you.
Before I go into the legislative part of the approval, I want to mention one thing that has come up recently. I think probably 4 weeks ago, we have a meeting with representatives from GL Homes, and they are working on a proposal that they have to develop new single-family houses on the section of not Broadway, but between 45th and 40th Street, Broadway and Flagler Drive. They have acquired a large percentage of the single-family properties that exist in the neighborhood, and they intend to basically redevelop that as single-family houses. That is not part of the BMOD regulation, so we're not going to have to discuss that. However, they have proposed a portion of the lots that they own are facing Broadway, and if I kind of laid out, this red line in the screen indicates the boundaries, more or less, the boundary of where BMOD is. So some of the lots that they are proposing are within the Broadway mixed-use district zoning, and we are discussing with them how they are approaching the frontage on Broadway. They have proposed a section that includes not having basically a building facing Broadway, but a side access road with some landscaping and a wall separating the single-family house from the road. So we had a meeting with them this morning. We are discussing some options of how to achieve what they want, but also be more in line with the regulation for Broadway. But we have not had time to discuss this, so we just want to mention it. It's an issue that has come up. We're proposing and negotiating, working with them on finding some alternatives, but we will need a little bit of time to discuss with them. So with that in mind, these will come up possible as a change in front of you when we come back at the second reading. And we are gonna request that the second reading for the BMOD does not happen in 2 weeks, but in 4 weeks, so we can have some time to kind of identify how we can find an alternative or viable solution for this and propose the necessary changes to adjust the regulation. So that is, I just wanted to mention that because it will come up as a change for the second reading. But having concluded that, basically, in terms of the proposal, what you have in front of you today is a city initiative request for approval of Ordinance 5121-24. That is an ordinance that will rezone the BMOD district, and Ordinance 5122-24 that will propose a text amendment to adopt the new regulations. In terms of the rezoning, we are rezoning from the existing BMOD Type 1 and Type 2. The corridor is divided right now in 2 districts. We are proposing to have only one designation for the entire corridor, so it will be from Type 1 to Type 2 to just a BMOD designation. And in terms of the text amendment, we are proposing to amend 4 different sections of the code. The first two, 94-4 and 94-209, are general sections where we have to adjust the language to recognize the changes that are proposed to the BMOD district. But section 94-219 and 94-220, we are actually replace them entirely and proposing the new regulations that were described previously. Will include new standards for height, setback, buffers, requirements, permitted uses, parking requirements, and all the regulations to basically develop the sites along Broadway. The section 94-220 will have specifically the regulations for the expanded district that is being proposed. And section 94-221 will be deleted. Notifications were sent to the adjacent property owners. We did a 500-foot radius with mailers that were sent out actually in December, ahead of the planning board meeting that happened in December. It was presented to the planning board in December and was unanimously approved by the board. We also comply with the display ad regulations, so display ad publication that is required for this type of amendments, and that was published in February 11 of this year. The proposed text amendment and rezoning complies with all the amendment and rezoning standards according with section 94-32 of the Zoning and Land Development Regulation, and staff is recommending approval for the two ordinances. That concludes the staff presentation. We're just requesting the second reading to be, instead of moved from March 3rd to March 17, 2025.
Thank you for that presentation. And as the history of the city is written, this meeting, I think will be a significant chapter. And I say that and I wish we had that word cloud slide, talking about what people think of Broadway now: crime, prostitution, not pretty, sketchy, I think was another word. And it's been that way for decades, right? And so I applaud this body for undertaking the challenge of transforming that corridor of our city. And as I said, when the history of the city is written, generations from now, they'll look back and applaud us for taking on the challenge. It's not going to be easy. That's why it's taken so long to get to where we are now, but we are equal to the challenge. So thank you, staff. Thank you to Dover Cole and all those involved. Yes, there's still work to be done, but I am proud of the fact that we are rolling up our shirt sleeves and embarking, because when the word cloud changes from what it is now to what people will see, ultimately, it's something we can all be proud of. Any questions, comments? President Ward, Commissioner Warren, Commissioner Lambert?
Just a comment to piggyback on other comments, and I know staff knows this, and I'm so appreciative of Dover Cole, but I am so appreciative of Anna Maria and Chris. I mean, you guys really, amongst all the other things that are going on just alone in my district, but all over the city, the fact that you guys have been able to really get this moving and such in the pace that it has been. I mean, I always tell people one of the first community meetings I went to when I moved back into the area over 10 years ago was a Broadway meeting. And, you know, I'm going to give the mayor a little bit of credit, because just a little bit. Just a little bit of credit. Because, you know, I think there's been a huge shift bringing in Chris's role internally. And you did that. And so I feel like we've been pushing a lot more and doing a lot more with our CRA because of those moves. And I know, Anna, you left and went back to planning, but your mind, utilizing you during this process, was pivotal. So I'm so glad that you were with the CRA to help move this forward, and that you're still continuing it on in the other department. So I'm just so appreciative. I'm so excited. And, you know, the reason why we did have that turnout is because the residents are excited. You know, they want to see change. They want to embrace their area and be happy walking outside their doors. And so I'm really excited about this item. Thank you.
Commissioner Warren?
Thank you. I agree with looking forward to seeing wonderful things happen on Broadway. We know that it has been a very long time. I don't know that it's really been activated and engaged in the last
30 some odd years, so this is something that I'm looking forward to. I'd like to ensure that as we grow and move, that there is a sense of belonging for everyone along that Broadway corridor, and that we hear more about that as we continue to move forward. And if you could, please go to, that's all I have for now. I'll let my colleagues speak, and then I'll.
Commissioner Lambert.
Thank you so much. As mentioned earlier, extremely excited to see this in front of us today and the support that it has throughout the community. I do have a couple of questions because as I was reviewing the documents and thinking about these plans, I was really thinking about South Dixie as well, because we can use this as a test case of what maybe has gone well and what maybe some areas that we could make sure we do better on in the north end. And one of those is parking. And I know we talked about that a little bit earlier, but I'm just wondering if you could talk to us a little bit about how we avoid having some of the parking issues that we have in the south end, where businesses, in a little complex, there's 4 different businesses and there's only 4 or 5 parking spots, and wanting to make sure that then this parking doesn't start encroaching upon the neighborhood. And then I have a second question, but if I could wait for this answer.
Yes, I can try to address that. The difference between the South Dixie and the Broadway corridor is we expect the redevelopment of Broadway happen with new buildings. So it's the fabric that is in there is not conducive to be transformed that much. So the majority, and I will not say all, the majority will happen as new buildings. When new buildings come in, they will have to comply with the parking requirement. And the parking requirement is lower than the rest of the city. It was more paired towards the downtown. It's 2 per every 1,000 square feet of commercial and 1 only for residential. And I think that is important because we have to find a balance between how much parking we ask and how much redevelopment we are proposing. Because if we constrain the businesses too much with the parking, they will not be able to come in. So we're not doing anything. I will say it's a good thing that South Dixie is having parking issues because it means that the businesses are vibrant and have enough clientele to survive. If things go well, I think at some point, probably some parking structures will have to be developed along South Dixie and along Broadway. And that will be the next step, to be able to absorb that dynamic, because we need the businesses to have a lot of customers to be able to survive and thrive. And the reality is these lots are small, so they will not be able to accommodate enough parking for this. Ideally, you have more customers from the surrounding neighborhoods and people can walk to those businesses, or people, as we progress in our transportation initiatives, people will take public transportation to arrive to those businesses. But it's kind of a really fine line of how much parking we request, how much parking they need, and how much parking we are able to put in there to balance all that. So it's not a straight answer. I'm sorry.
No. I appreciate the thoughtfulness into the balance of it, and that you've thought about whether we might in the future need a parking structure, or looking at multimodal forms of transportation, making sure that it's pedestrian friendly, that whether we have other forms of public transit or other forms of transportation available.
And I would just add that we did extensive code testing as well. So we tested specific properties from the CRA, and we made sure that the parking counts were good to be able to park it and build it as well. So we did go a little bit back and forth between that, but we made sure that they were working. So.
Okay, great. And I do have a second question.
Yes.
Thank you. And it relates to that balance as well with the neighborhoods that you talked about that abut the businesses there. And just thinking about, I know that you mentioned you looked at some of the uses and looked at the ones that might not work there, but I just want to make sure that we look at things that maybe aren't in our code as a lounge or a club of some sort, but that might morph into that at some point just because of the nature of the business. And I know that I've heard from some residents, that abut businesses that there's a sound issue when there's businesses that are allowed to extend their hours of operation, and I just want to be careful that we find that balance.
Yes, Commissioner. I would look more into detail onto that list and bring you an answer for the second hearing. I think some of the issues that we have seen with loud noises for businesses is in some cases businesses that do illegal use of spaces. And it's more an enforcement than other things. Because you can have a restaurant that is allowed, but if they do outdoor seating on the back and they put loud music, they will basically disturb the residential next to it. But I will look into more detail on the uses list we have.
Great, thank you.
Commissioner Fox?
Thank you so much to all of you involved. I know it's been a long time coming, and it's very exciting to hear for us and also to know that the community is also thrilled that this is on the way. I have a couple of questions. I guess, in terms of the uses that you mentioned going forward, were the businesses that are currently located in the neighborhood, were they part of the discussion, and just to ensure that the uses that are going forward do all the businesses that are there currently qualify for the new uses that we're looking at?
Well, if you have a use right now located along the corridor, and we change the code, and for example, you have, car wash, a car dealership or a car wash, or car dealer. You have it right now in there. If your business is in there, you are allowed to continue it. And let's say the new regulation does not allow it, you are allowed to continue the business and operation until your business ceases to exist. You can sell it as long as the business exists and is not abandoned for more than 6 months. You have the right to continue, and it's considered basically what we call legal nonconformity. And that happens throughout the entire city, and we have those ones in different locations. So it's kind of a process of transition. At some point, we expect those users will find that it's not desirable for them to be along the corridor, and they decide to move somewhere else. But if they continue to thrive in there and they want to stay, they can remain in there. So, and that's what happened with the uses, when they are uses that are not going to be allowed in the future.
Yes.
Thank you. You mentioned that probably most of it would be new buildings, which would be different than what is happening in the south end. And I assume that's because most of them are owned by the CRA. I was just curious what percentage of these properties are owned by the CRA?
Well, there's a lot of vacant land along Broadway. So those ones we expect, those ones, and we hope those ones gonna get redeveloped. There are also small buildings that we hope also the new regulation is attractive enough that they decide to put them together and redevelop. So it will happen different. I mean, there are some multifamily that probably will remain in there, but it's a lot of vacant land along the corridor, so that's why it's a little bit different than Dixie, South Dixie.
Commissioner, just to answer your question, the CRA only owns 4 lots at the intersection of 57th Street. So it's a very small percentage of the entire corridor. Majority of the corridor is privately owned. There is some city-owned land down on the south end, and that's the extent of public ownership.
Okay, great, thank you.
Commissioner Warren?
Thank you. If you can go back, Ms. Aponte, to, I believe it's slide 11.
In my presentation or the Dover Call presentation?
Okay, maybe it's not slide 11. It's the slide where, for GL Homes.
Oh, okay.
9. All
This
right.
one?
Yes, I know that we're not addressing this particular item tonight, but you mentioned it, and you said that you'll require a few more weeks in order to discuss this further. I'm interested in hearing when we have further conversation, do we anticipate that there would be any displacement? And if there is there an approach to address that? And I don't expect that you'll have that answer prior to conversations, but I would like to hear how we anticipate addressing any concerns.
Displacement of any tenants along Broadway?
Correct, in this area, on this
Or
slide.
the entire area?
Correct,
Okay, we can look into that.
thank you.
President Ward?
Just to
clarify that a little bit because I live in that neighborhood, and I know the owners very well. Some of the businesses aren't active. They haven't been able to find tenants along that. Even, I think at even reduced prices, they haven't been able to get tenants. My, that 5 block area has been kind of just in the no man's land. They own a lot of it. There are a lot of renters in there. And then obviously scattered amongst have homesteaders within there as well. So, I think part of the outreach between staff and myself was to go to the, our key businesses and developers to say, what can you do with these areas? And they came up with that plan and they're working on it. So I'm happy that they're working with staff because they answered our request is, hey, what can you do that fits and that can make this more of a thriving area? And that's single family because there's so many neighborhoods along that area. So I know that it's a work in progress, but right now, there's a couple little businesses, like there's a really cute panaderia that opened up, but I'm hoping that they can move into a new building and make fresh bread that I can smell every morning. So those types of things.
Yes, thank you. And, another point to what you're saying is I don't think that people often think of the connectivity of Broadway to like the port and how this can stimulate so much more as a result of having a very vibrant corridor. So I'm looking forward to it. I just want to make sure that we're addressing all of the issues appropriately.
And if I could just say one more thing.
Yes.
To your point, the Manatee Lagoon was so well attended, but what staff said is they still had to do Esperanza and Rise because there's still that disconnect. And I can't wait for that opening, more, to be able to come and on the water side and enjoy our beautiful waterfront. That I just feel like, FDOT's going to take however long FDOT takes, but we can do what we can around there to make it more inviting so that people go on both sides of the street and enjoy everything that we can potentially offer.
Okay, any other questions?
I have another question.
Okay, you gotta catch me when I'm looking that way, because as soon as I turn my head, that's when you hold up your hand. Yes,
Maybe you
Commissioner
might see it in the
Lambert?
reflection. Thank you, Mayor. I was really happy to see the attention to the landscaping plan and the streetscape plan. I think making it safe and attractive to pedestrians, promotes walking, but also maybe slows down traffic as well. I was curious if you could talk a little bit about how you took into consideration the FDOT plan that's taking place on this road as well. And just wanting to make sure that we've taken into consideration that plan related to the setbacks that we're suggesting here.
Yes, so the intention is when the FDOT plan happens, it actually will make the section better, at least for the east side of the street. That is where the multipurpose path is going to be created. Just going to go to this section. Because what they are going to do is basically they're going to move this curve into the travel lane. So we're going to have actually more space to play with. They're going to probably wind a wider sidewalk. So we're going to play with that area to accommodate the multipurpose path that they want. But in terms of, the intention is to have the same space that we set the requirement, and when FDOT comes with the project, it's better. It's more space for public enjoyment and less travel lanes.
That's great. That's great, and I think that having that buffer between the traffic and the pedestrians on the sidewalk is going to make a big difference. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? If not, I will entertain a motion.
So excited. Mayor, I move to approve ordinance number 5121-2. Oh, wait. Don't we have comments first?
Oh, we do have a card. Yes, I'm sorry. Thank you. Michael Zeff. Thank you, Commissioner President.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. I'm Michael Zeff, President and CEO of the Chamber of Commerce of the Palm Beaches, and I am here to express our Chamber's support for the Broadway Mixed-Use District project before you this evening. Back in December, our Government Affairs Committee and our board reviewed this project and unanimously voted in support of it. We believe this initiative is a step forward in fostering economic growth, business development, and smart planning along the Broadway corridor, and we urge your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, if there are no other comments from the dais, I'll entertain a motion.
I move approval of ordinance number 5121-24, rezoning certain properties from Broadway Mixed Use District Building Type 1 and Broadway Mixed Use District Building Type 2 to Broadway Mixed Use District, BMUD. This motion is based upon the factual testimony presented, the staff report, the recommendation of the planning board, the finding that the rezoning is consistent with the comprehensive plan, and consideration of the factors listed in section 94-32 of the zoning and land development regulations.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Discussion. Hearing none. Madam Clerk, can you read the ordinance, please?
Ordinance number 5121-24. An ordinance of the City Commission of the City of West Palm Beach, Florida, amending the zoning map of the City of West Palm Beach, Florida, by rezoning the properties generally located between 59th Street and 25th Street to the east and west and facing the Florida State Road A1A, and consisting of approximately 43.9 acres. From Broadway Mixed Use District Building Type 1 and Broadway Mixed Use District Building Type 2 to Broadway Mixed Use District. Declaring this zoning map amendment to be consistent with the comprehensive plan of the city, providing a conflict clause and a severability clause, providing for an effective date, and for other purposes.
Thank you. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, like sign. Hearing no opposition, motion passes unanimously. Thank you. President Ward.
I move approval of ordinance number 5122-24, approving text amendments to the zoning and land development regulations, Chapter 94, establishing new zoning categories and development standards and regulations for the Broadway Mixed-Use District. This motion is based upon the factual testimony presented, the staff report, the recommendation of the planning board, the finding that the rezoning is consistent with the comprehensive plan, and consideration of factors listed in section 94-32 of the zoning and land development regulations.
Thank you. It's
Second.
been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Discussion. Hearing none. Madam Clerk, can you read the ordinance, please?
Ordinance number 5122-24. An ordinance of the City Commission of the City of West Palm Beach, Florida, amending the Code of Ordinances of the City of West Palm Beach, Florida, at Chapter 94, Zoning and Land Development Regulation, to amend regulations applicable to the Broadway Mixed Use District as follows. Amending Article 1, Section 94-4, Zoning Districts to redefine the Broadway Mixed Use District categories. Amending and restating Article 7, Section 94-209, Mixed-Use Districts, to add BMUD definitions and regulations. Amending and restating Section 94-219, Broadway Mixed-Use District, to establish new development standards for BMUD. Amending and restating Section 94-220, to create the Broadway Mixed-Use District, expanded development standards, and deleting Section 94-221, BMUD Building Type 1, Type 2 regulations, declaring this amendment to be consistent with the comprehensive plan of the city, providing a conflicts clause, a codification clause, and severability clause, providing an effective date, and for other purposes.
All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, like sign. Hearing no opposition, motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Exciting day.
Did I need to include the request for the additional 2 weeks in my motion? I'm
Because
just
I don't
sorry.
think we had a date for the, necessarily had a
Okay.
date for the
You
second
were
meeting.
gonna ask?
Sometimes we do, but we didn't on this one.
Okay, just making sure.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Ponte and all involved.
Thank you very much.
Item 9.2, public hearing and first reading of ordinance number 5124-25, a city-initiated text amendment to the zoning and land development regulations, ZLDRs, at section 94-11, applications to amend required documentation for proof of ownership and section 94-611 definitions to clarify the definition for building height, fence, wall, height measurement, and dwelling unit.
Mayor Commissioners, Angela Van, Planning and Zoning Administrator. The mayor's already said what the request is about. The first request is, from time to time, staff needs to correct the, update the zoning and land development regulations. So this is mostly what this request is about. The first is for proof of ownership. As times have changed, we found that some of the developers and/or property owners, when they're trying to, have property for sale, they basically have not entered into ownership at that particular point in time. So right now, the way our code is written, it requires specific owner's consent form, very specific. So this is just updating what forms of owner's consent were acceptable that can be submitted with the development applications to allow for an application to go through the process. The next one is with the issues with, and this is mostly for the homes that are along Flagler and the floodplain area. As you know, the code requires with the flood-based maps, they have to raise the lots up to a certain height, and/or it requires, and the city has a 2-foot floorboard that we have ourselves. So staff just want to clarify where fences are measured from, because we want to be sure that when someone is raising their home, that the neighbor's not stuck looking at an 8 or 9-foot high wall adjacent to them. So therefore, we're clarifying that we measure the fence and walls are measured from the property lines, from the exterior of the property line. So it's very clear, because we had a case that came up, so we want to be very clear that where we're measuring from is from the property line and not from the actual interior. And just want to clarify the structure is measured from the finished exterior grade of the homes. And the last is for the structure height. Again, with the new flood freeboard and base flood elevation requirements, an applicant can bring in as much fill as he wants. Basically, when they come to raise their lot up, it's no maximum per se that you have to do. So staff want to be sure that we measure only from where the city's freeboard and base flood elevation requirements are for height-wise. So you can bring in 10 feet of fill, but if the base flood elevation requirements are only at 8, that's where the city is going to measure it from. So basically, to try to control some of the height in the areas, especially for new construction, and especially when they're adjacent to existing single-family homes. And the last is, because of an increase in some of the high-end condo units that we've seen in the city, there's been an increase in the request to allow additional kitchens. Right now, our code owner allows 1 kitchen per dwelling unit. So what we decided, this amendment is allow you to add another up to 2 kitchens, provided all the kitchens serve just 1 single dwelling unit and only for 1 single household. So this basically allows some of the high-end condos, allows them to have the 2 kitchens that we've been getting requests for. Staff finds that this ordinance complies with zoning and land development regulations, section 9232A. And planning board approved this request by a vote of 6-1 at the December 17th, 2024 meeting. Staff recommends approval of ordinance number 512425. Is there any questions you may have?
Thank you very much, Ms. Van, for that presentation. Commissioner Lambert.
Thank you. Is the requirement or the new regulation regarding 2 kitchens only in condos, or?
No, I'm just saying, no, it's for citywide. It's condos, single-family homes, it's citywide. But the request basically came from the high-end condo. But no, it's for everybody. A single-family home is only allowed to have 1 kitchen.
And how will we know, I know that you put the regulation in there that it will only be used to serve 1 household. How will we know that it's only serving 1 household and not jam-packing a house, which then causes parking issues in neighborhoods and things like that?
Well, when staff, mostly this was basically for the new units on South Flagler Drive. That's where it all came up from South Flagler Drive. But the problem is the way our code is written is defined in citywide. It's not necessarily just for South Flagler. Staff had some of that concerns about how we regulate some of that also when we brought this forward. And the best we can do is, again, right now they can put 10, 20, 30 people in a house, and we will know about it until either neighbors or somebody actually tells us and we find out about it. So the best we can do is just regulate it through code enforcement, building permits, and just word of mouth, because right now they may put 10 people in a household.
Any other questions, comments on this item? Any cards? Okay, Commissioner Fox?
Thank you so much. When I'm looking at the planning board approval with conditions, can you tell us a little bit more about what the conditions were and what the one, I guess, opponent to this?
Oh, the planning board, based on the 6-to-1 vote?
Yeah, the agenda says that it was recommended with conditions.
Well, one of the issue was that one member on the planning board had an issue with the form of owner's consent that we were recommending, because he was asking, how do we prove that if somebody presents something to us, where most of it's always still requires, I think it's attorney to actually sign something for it, for the owner's consent, proof of, so that was his issue. He was having an issue with that, and we clarified that with our city attorney's office, so we should be okay with the language.
Any other questions or comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I move approval of ordinance number 5124-25, amending Chapter 94 zoning and land development regulations at Section 94-41, applications in Section 94-611 definitions. This motion is based upon the factual testimony presented, the staff report, the recommendation of the planning board, and the findings that the proposed amendment complies with all the amendment standards found in Section 94-32 of the city's zoning and land development regulations.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved and second. Discussion? Hearing none. Madam Clerk, can you read the ordinance, please?
Ordinance number 5124-25. An ordinance of the City Commission of the City of West Palm Beach, Florida, amending the Code of Ordinances of the City of West Palm Beach, Florida, at Chapter 94, Zoning and Land Development Regulations, to clarify certain procedures and definitions, amending Article 2, Organization, Administration, and Enforcement at Section 94-41 application, to clarify documentation required for disclosure of ownership and permit purchasers under contract to submit applications, amending Article 19, Definitions, Section 94-611 definitions, to clarify the definition of height of structure, and amending the definition of dwelling unit, declaring these amendments to be consistent with the comprehensive plan of the city, providing a conflicts clause, a codification clause, and a severability clause, providing an effective date, and for other purposes.
All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, like sign. Hearing no opposition, motion carries unanimously. Thank you. We'll now turn to the quasi-judicial portion of this meeting. Commissioners, I will need you to make your disclosures. Commissioner Fox?
As to item 10.1, I have had ex parte communications with representatives of the applicant. I have not received written communications. I have not conducted an investigation. I have not made a site visit. I have not received expert opinions. I request that these disclosures and all written communications be made part of the record.
Commissioner Warren?
Thank you, Mayor. As to item 10.1, I have had ex parte communications with the applicant's representative. I have not received written communications. I have not conducted an investigation. I have not made a site visit, not received expert opinions. I request that these disclosures and all written communications be made part of the record.
President Ward?
As to item 10.1, I have had ex parte communications with representatives of the applicant. I have not received written communications, have not conducted an investigation, have not made a site visit, have not received expert opinions. I request that these disclosures and all written communications be made part of the record.
Commissioner Lambert?
Thank you. I need to recuse myself from this item.
But let's get the disclosure first.
do I need
and then
to do
then
that
I
even
call
if I'm-
10.1.
But I need to do it even if I'm recusing myself?
Just for the record.
Okay. As to this matter, I have had ex parte communications with the applicant. I have not received written communications. I have not conducted an investigation. I have not made a site visit, and I have not received expert opinions. I request that these disclosures and all written communications be made part of the record.
Commissioner Peduzzi.
Thank you, Mayor. As to item 10.1, I have had ex parte communications with a representative of the applicant. I have not received written communications. I have not conducted an investigation. I have not made a site visit, nor have I received any expert opinions. I request that these disclosures and all written communications be made a part of the record.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, can you swear in all witnesses, please?
Would everyone wishing to speak on item 10.1 please stand and raise your right hand? Do you swear that the testimony you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, I'm going to read 10.1, and then Commissioner Lambert, I know you have something to say before we get into the substance. Item 10.1, public hearing of resolution number 270-24 regarding a major amendment to the West Palm Commerce Park Industrial Plan Development located on the west side of Haverhill Road, approximately 1/4 mile south of 45th Street, to allow church and accessory daycare uses on Lot 6. Commissioner Lambert?
Thank you, Mayor. I need to recuse myself from this item as WGI is working on this application with the applicant, and my husband is an employee of WGI. Thank you.
Very good. Now we will hear presentation on item 10.1.
Hi, good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Matthew Barnes, Senior Project Manager at WGI. I'll be very brief in my remarks tonight because it's a pretty straightforward application. The project is located at the southwest corner of Tyler Lakes Boulevard and Haverhill Road. It's 2.95 acres. It is within the West Palm Commerce Park Industrial Planned Unit Development, it's in the southeast corner of the PUD. As you can see on the screen, the yellow triangle is the entire PUD. It's across the street from the Cacti City Park. Quite simply, the application request is to do like a text amendment to the allowable uses in the Commerce Park Industrial Planned Unit Development to allow churches, synagogues, and other houses of worship is a permitted use, which it currently is not, and also daycare facilities for children as an accessory use to a place of worship. Quite simply, this is a look at the table now. This is not an allowed use. We would simply insert 2 rows into that table to allow those 2 uses. It would only be applicable to the subject property, which is lot number 6, in the plat. So that's to alleviate any concerns that, churches and daycares would be proliferated throughout the PUD. It's only applicable to this particular property, which Divine Savior Ministries is a contract purchaser for. And then as well, there's a condition in the PUD approval that says, if the number of trips exceeds a certain amount, which is 2,649, then certain other traffic studies have to be done. So we did a traffic study to analyze how much traffic is being generated by the PUD with this change, and it's well under that threshold, so no further traffic studies were required. The site plan that goes along with this is considered a minor site plan, so it's being processed concurrently with staff through the administrative process. We've already been to the plans, plats, and review committee once, and we expect to have site plan approval within a few weeks. That concludes my presentation. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Any questions for the applicant before we call staff up? Okay, stand by. Staff? Ms. Van?
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. The applicant has done a good job of going through all of it, so staff would just go to the recommendations. Planning Board heard this request at the November 19, 2024 meeting and approved it unanimously 7-0, subject to the conditions which the applicant are okay with. It complies with all the standards of 9432A. And staff recommends approval of resolution number 270-24. Happy to answer any questions.
Very good. Any questions for staff? All right, any cards on this?
No public comment.
Okay. All right, if there are no other comments, questions, then I will certainly entertain a motion.
Sorry, Mayor, give me 1 second here. Mayor, I move approval of resolution number 270-24, which will approve the major amendment to the West Palm Beach Commerce Park Industrial Plan Development based upon the application submitted, the staff report, factual testimony, the recommendation of the planning board, the findings that the request complies with the comprehensive plan and the standards in section 94-32A of the city's zoning and land development regulations.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, like sign. Hearing no opposition, motion carries 4-0 with Commissioner Lambert recusing himself. Okay, thank you. All right, we'll now turn to comments from the public. We have 2 cards, Michael Cleveland and Jack Vroman. You can make your way toward the podium. Michael Cleveland, Jack Vroman.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners, staff, audience. Have you seen that traffic on Broadway as of late? We started building a lot of buildings, which is good. I love development. But the traffic is going to be horrendous, more so than it is now. But I will tell you that west of Broadway, in the area in which you're planning, is a high number of Hispanic and blacks live in that area. And so this particular would be another force out, maybe considered one of the biggest moves of racism in the city. FP&L is raising a height, this is old news, because they want to repair and replace all the damaged wiring and stuff from the hurricane. And they want to raise the bill and have us pay for it so they can still charge us for electric bill. Nobody never says anything about these rate hikes, but it's absolutely a shame. I just want to go back and talk about Black History Month for a minute. Last year we had presentations of professional blacks in this chamber. Yeah, it went kind of bad. Some reading was off, but still made pretty good. This year you did the same thing. I was very happy to see that the number of blacks and professionals throughout the city or county. But I have to tell you, Mayor, and I think you introduced the word to this chamber, Uncle Tom. Their presentation was overshadowed by the acknowledgement of a law firm, but had nothing to do with Black history. And I wasn't happy with that, even though you have the right and privilege to do whatever you want in this chamber for the city. But we never seem to hold a platform to ourselves for any period of time without being overshadowed by something that's not important. I thank you. I don't want to get angry. I thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you very much. Jack Vroman.
Thank you, ladies, gentlemen. Nice to see you. I'm also here for Black History Month. I had intended to come last week to the CRA meeting, and I just couldn't make it. And so I wanted to start with my comments from last time I appeared from you, February 5th of last year. And so like all of you, or I hope like many of you, I'm a little freaked out about the direction our country is taking right now, and the attack on everyone other than a non-white male. And I look up here and I see this, a rainbow coalition, and so I've been here all my life. I've been running around Palm Beach all my life. I know what rich people are like, and I know that, I'm fortunate enough that I can pass as a Republican if I have to. But it's something to be, you know, the history of this county has not only been less than favorable to the economically disadvantaged, it's always been incredibly anti-Semitic, and especially Palm Beach. So to have a non-governmental employee who, I wouldn't call him a Nazi because I don't call people names, but I just kind of feel if I didn't think he was a neo-Nazi, he would think, well, I'm missing the point. I'm kind of like, how do I not see that by what he's doing? And then, of course, at my in my old age, I'm a little concerned about my Social Security and all this information being given to a, so whatever. Now, I'm going to give you a little bit of well, we're going to call this the State of the Sunset talk. And I am, as you may remember, I met with Gina January of 2016, so 9 years ago. I've been following this closely, and I don't know that it's been resolved. I know that the last split was 3-3, and it's still, I believe, in litigation. I know it's not open, and it's so. At the last meeting I attended, the mayor said that it's insanity to keep doing the same thing and expect a different result, but it's beyond that. It's you don't have a plan, you didn't have a plan, you don't have a plan, and you don't need to come up with a plan.
Thank you very much. Okay, we will now turn to the dais. We'll begin with you, President Ward.
Thank you. I wanted to give an update on a couple community meetings. So last meeting, I mentioned that we were still having the monthly North End Police Chief meetings, and that has been changed to quarterly now. So the next one will be April 9th, and then it'll be July 9th, and then October 8th. So I will announce those as they come up, and I'll make sure I'm emailing everyone. It'll still be at Gaines Park Community Center. The planning department's also having a North Flagler Community Workshop on Monday, February 24th at 5:30 at City Hall. During this meeting, staff will introduce and establish the process and procedures for requests involving new construction located within the North Flagler Overlay District, introduce and establish the development regulations for the North Flagler Overlay District, and delete the floor area ratio commercial definition and update the floor area ratio definition. So that's going to be discussed there for all of the North End residents who are interested. And then finally, the next Nights in Northwood Village, it will be on Friday, March 14th, to experience the cultures of Northwood Village with community food, shopping, and live entertainment, all while learning about exciting CRA projects. And just because we're very excited about all the development there, but it does turn away some potential customers for the businesses. So if you could please just continue to keep the businesses there in mind. They're small businesses, and they need your support to continue through the construction phase to experience the increased density we're gonna have after everything's done. And that's it, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Warren?
Thank you, Mayor. March 3rd through 7th is annual Operation Greenlight. The event is happening for 1 week only. The clerk and comptroller of Palm Beach County puts the brakes on collection agency fees to help drivers with unpaid traffic tickets and overdue court fines get back on the road. You can pay in full or set up a payment plan to save money and restore your driving privileges. This is a once-a-year event. February is American Heart Month. Heart disease is a leading cause of death in the U.S., but impacts some communities disproportionately. This month aims to encourage individuals to learn about heart disease and its risk factors, for individuals to get screened for heart conditions, and for advocate for policies that promote heart health. Our Office of Small and Minority Business Programs has posted a list of upcoming events. I encourage entrepreneurs and small businesses to take note and apply to the upcoming classes, like the bonding series taking place March 5th to April 2nd. For more classes and information, please visit the city's website at WPB.org. That concludes my comments.
Commissioner Fox.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm very excited to announce that tomorrow the Howard Park Tennis Center will have its ribbon cutting. This project will include renovation of 7 existing clay courts, resurfacing 2 hard courts, and then reconfiguring a layout to add 4 pickleball courts, which I know has been in hot demand. So the ribbon cutting is tomorrow at 10 a.m. if anyone wants to attend, and after that, it will be open for the public. So looking forward to that, and that's all I have.
Commissioner Doozy.
Thank you, Mayor. The Grassy Waters Nature Conservancy is in the midst of their 2025 photography contest, and they are currently accepting entries. The contest is intended to showcase the natural environment and diversity of Grassy Waters Preserve by amateur photographers. It is a great way to support Grassy Waters Preserve, the Everglades, right here in West Palm Beach. Entries are accepted until February 28th, and you can go to grassywaters.org for more information and how to upload your entry. Thank you.
Commissioner Lambert.
Thank you, Mayor. I hope everyone enjoyed a long weekend celebrating President's Day. I also wanted to mention and thank some of the residents who recently reported some light outages just south of South Olive Park. Thank you to staff who quickly responded and worked with FPL to get those lights working again. So thank you so much for that. And wanted to take this opportunity to remind residents about the WPB Key app that you can get off of your app store, off of your mobile device. And I was surprised. I ran into some residents recently who wasn't familiar with it. And I think it's a great way for folks to report light outages, potholes, issues that you might see throughout the city. And then it allows city staff to track these and, to see trends in issues that might be popping up throughout our city. Also wanted to mention, related to Howard Park, that the softball fields were recently closed for maintenance, but they are reopening for drop-in play starting again this Saturday. And I know that was really important for some families in the neighborhood to have a fun place and to utilize those softball parks. And also have been recently hearing questions about road closures, and wanted to remind everyone that the city's road closures are all listed on our city's website. But additionally, in my biweekly newsletter, I do list the road closures in District 5, as well as other announcements such as these. And so if there are folks who want to receive that, you can email me at clambert@wpb.org, and I will add you to that mailing list. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a few comments. Commissioners, as leaders, our actions are under constant scrutiny. And a lot of times we get criticized by those who are distant from a problem. And because of their distance, they lack critical context. And I believe it's vital, before criticizing decisions, that you do your research and avoid jumping to conclusions based on limited information. So recently, the Palm Beach Post published an editorial criticizing me and the City Commission for a vote that we took regarding the Curry Park redevelopment project. I'm sure you all remember we approved West Contracting to do the work. And received criticism because an officer of West had been indicted in Tampa. And so I thought that editorial was grossly ignorant in its approach. And so I wrote an editorial. I wrote a response to the editorial outlining my thoughts on that decision so that the West Palm Beach residents could understand the facts. And We made a decision, challenging decision, was not easy, guided by fiscal responsibility and a commitment to moving ahead a project that was critical to the needs of our citizens, our residents. And so if anyone wants to see the full letter, a portion of it was published in the paper, but if they want to see the full letter that I sent the editorial board, it's available at WPB.org under Office of Communications in the Insider Newsletters section. And you should look for the newsletter labeled February 14th to get that. So I'll be flying out to LA later this week to attend the quarterly board meeting of the African American Mayors Association. I was recently appointed to that board. And an interesting part of the weekend, I'll be sitting in a panel and participating in a panel discussion that focuses on natural disasters. And one of the other mayors, Karen Bass, who was going through, mayor of LA, who was going through their issues with the forest fires, will be one of the participants. But it's truly an honor to be invited to engage in this critical conversation with other mayors from across the nation. Seems like everyone, each portion of our state, that there's some kind of natural disaster, whether it's tornadoes, wildfires, hurricanes, as we have here. So it'll be interesting. It's an honor to participate in that conversation. The Pleasant City Community Meeting and Curry Park Placemaking Plan will be presented on Thursday, February 27th at 6 p.m. at the quarterly Pleasant City Community Meeting. And that will be held at the Pleasant City Community Center. Residents should come learn about important new updates, discuss top community concerns, including safety, and help us shape the future of Curry Park's programming and events, including the Curry Park Cafe design and function. And that concludes my remarks for tonight. Thank you. God bless each and every one of you. God bless the great city of West Palm Beach. Good night. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.